We get to work. Good evening, everybody. It is 7:01. We're in the Senior Center. It is Wednesday, May 1st, a special meeting with just two items on the agenda. And let's call the meeting to order with a pledge of allegiance. The flag is in the back. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk.
Councilor Perry? Present. I don't need it. Councilor Hilton? Present. Councilor DiMederos? Councilor Katz? Present. Councilor Coulter?
Present.
Councilor Cook? Present. Councilor Driggs? Present. All present.
Okay, again, thank you.
President Coulter, I'd like to interrupt. Ooh, I'm sorry, I really interrupted, didn't I? I'd like to do a moment of silence for Hannibal Coster, that was our town clerk for many, many years on the Board of Canvassers and also on the town council. I'd like to do the moment of silence for all his dedication and hard work to the town of Tiverton.
Thank you. And the services are tonight until 8 o'clock, and the funeral procession is tomorrow, May 2nd, for that. Okay, so we are here on two agenda items. One is to just prepare for the financial town hearing, which is tomorrow. I'm hoping just to have a calm conversation about seeing if there's any issues. I understand there was a Board of Canvassers meeting and there was a hotly contested thing. My goal is not to resolve that. I just want to make sure we understand where there might be any discrepancies and what we might do if there are discrepancies. And then the second item is to talk more generally about the Board of Canvassers. So what I was just hoping to see is, for example, if there was a lack of clarity, for example, if there was money that was funded but not in the tax rate, or not in the tax rate and not funded, how that might play out if the elector petition is approved at the financial town referendum. And again, the concept here is I just want to make sure we're prepared for the hearing tomorrow. So I don't know if this will actually be a very long meeting, but because of the events of the Board of Canvassers, I just wanted to make sure we weren't caught flat-footed. So what I think would make sense, and we will allow public comment on this, but the goal here isn't to have this big long debate. I just want to understand where are there open issues, and let's make sure we understand what the different perspectives are, and that's all I'm trying to do here.
Rob, before we start, I'd like to note something, and I just have great concerns about this. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of the charter, Section 1218, use of town resources to influence a voting contest. And it states no officer or employee of the town, including the school department, shall use or cause to be used town property, goods, money, grants, or labor to influence the outcome of an election, ballot question, or referendum. I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind as we go forward.
Great. So maybe I'll put the solicitor on the spot. I have your memo. This is a public document, right, this memo? Okay. And again, without rehashing the Board of Canvassers, I just want to spot the issues and just make sure I understand what the different perspectives are. I want to make sure Mr. Mantella, if he wants to speak. And again, I just want to know what the open issues are so that we have a sense of how it might play out in case this comes up in the meeting tomorrow. And I don't know that this needs to be particularly long, but we'll see. So I can't think of anybody else to put on the hot seat, so I thought I would start with you. Is that fair?
I'd like to interrupt for a minute, but I don't think that the town council has any real duty tomorrow at the town referendum. We actually, I've been president for 3 years, and what our duty is just to make sure that we explain the resolutions that we've placed on the ballot. Other than that, the Board of Canvassers is the one that put this on the ballot, and the Budget Committee and the alternative budget presenter speaks. So I'm not quite sure what our role is in all of this. And once the budget is decided, then we can talk about how we move forward. But I'm a little confused on why this meeting is being held before that.
So without, rehashing the detail of the canvassing meeting, I did raise a number of issues in a memorandum presented to the canvassing board, as well as copied to the council, about the Mr. Mantel's petition, and I won't restate them line by line, but my concern had to do with, to shorthand it, the math. The fact that the petition face page, the page on the front of the petition, didn't have the main numbers as required by our charter add up, and then the calculation of the tax rate change was not something that appeared to be correct by any variety of calculations. So I think the issue, and perhaps this is to Councilor DiMedeiros' point, I think the issue becomes you may get questions tomorrow that have to do with, well, if there are two different numbers in a petition, or if there are two different numbers on the front of a petition, or if there is a tax rate that is not necessarily calculable as the change in tax rate. And I think in the memo I noted that it could be anything from a small increase in total revenue to a 0.5% decrease, but the range is difficult or not possible, at least in my assessment, to calculate. So I think what I'm concerned about, and that it may be worth talking about tonight, is who has the authority to clear up all those discrepancies. The canvassing board, in its discretion, allowed this to move forward, but if it were to pass, you have a budget that is not, first of all, it's not in line with the charter, and then second of all, the numbers don't necessarily add up. So does it, as the charter indicates, in some circumstances, revert to the budget committee for clarification? Is it on the treasurer's shoulders, or is it on the town council's shoulders as the sort of paramount authority in the town to sort these things out? I don't know what that answer is, and I can't find any guidance to that effect in the limited research I've had the opportunity to do since the canvassing board meeting. The one issue that I was most concerned about, I was able to do some research on, and that has to do with the school capital funds being shifted in some way in the petitioner budget versus the budget committee budget. I did talk to the Rhode Island Department of Education chief legal counsel, as well as one of the finance officials there, who indicated very clearly that they, to paraphrase, they don't care where we put the money. They will count it as what it is. So if it's a capital expense and it's a non-recurring expense, then it will not be, Tiverton will not be penalized in the level of effort, the maintenance of effort calculations. If it is used, allocated and used as an operating expense, then it will be a part of the maintenance of effort issue. So they don't necessarily care where you put it. It's just about what you do with it. So that was somewhat, I guess, of a relief to know that whichever budget passes, that shouldn't change that calculation in terms of years to come and your school funding. I'm not really sure what else I can offer at this point, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Let me just kick it off, and then people just jump in. And I wasn't at the Board of Canvassers meeting, but it seems to me that there are 5 numbers that have to be on the ballot, right? The school appropriation, the municipal appropriation, the property tax, the motor vehicle. Is it fair to say that those 5 numbers matter more than anything else in the backup? So what I mean by that is, if the tax decrease of 0.02 is what's on the petition, is that the one thing that we might agree doesn't change, and everything else might have to adjust?
Rob, I thought there was 4 numbers, but there was 4 items, but I'm looking it up right now.
I don't think there's any guidance as to which as precedent, right? I think the school committee will say that the allocation for the school committee is, untouchable. The town council, I think, might assert that the allocation for the town operations is untouchable, and the taxpayers may feel that the tax reduction is untouchable. But from my various attempts to interpret the backup so that I could understand where the frontline numbers came from, I don't have complete clarity, let's put it that way, as to which of those numbers should control and which authority should direct them.
So help me understand, just a follow, please, and then I'll kick it to you. I just want to make sure I understand. So are the 5 numbers that are on the ballot, like pretend there was no backup. There's just these 5 numbers. And imagine in that situation, and we could figure out how to deal with that. For the school side, it's actually rather simple because they have control, and we could figure out this. Did these 5 numbers have integrity within themselves, ignoring anything in the backup?
No, they don't, because they don't add up, first of all. And then secondly, the percentage cannot be determined from the numbers that were provided. And I believe Mr. Mantell used a different number than the one that the Budget Committee used in terms of making that calculation. We had some of that discussion at the canvassing board meeting, and I think it was an honest mistake, but I think it was a mistake. So I think the percentage is not accurate.
Is it possible to plug whatever discrepancy there may be by using the general fund? Does that
Rob.
solve the problem?
Rob, I'd like to interrupt here because, all due respect, Attorney Sicilioni, I know you've gone over this, but we've also had CPAs go over it and other people, and I talked to the treasurer today, and she looked at the budget, at the alternative budget, and she said that she finds no fatal flaws in it and that it is workable. So that's what's always happened in the past is a lot of these budgets have not been looked at with a fine-tooth comb like you have. And quite frankly, there's been a couple of budgets in the past that we've had some concerns about, and when the treasurer gets it and when the people vote for it, she works with it and she works it out. I talked to her today, and I know that other people in the audience talked to her today. She has looked at this budget, and she does not feel it's a fatal flaw where there would be great concern about this budget. I know you've looked at these numbers, and all due respect, you feel that these are wrong, but there are other people and other opinions that these aren't wrong numbers, and it's just a different way to calculate it.
Well, I think, let me just, I don't want to overstate this. I don't get to say whether they're fatal flaws, right? The canvassing board is the one that gets to say they're fatal flaws. I just pointed out that there are flaws, and yourselves and the voters and the treasurer and the canvassing board get to decide what's fatal or not. So I'm not here, I can only advise, and that's what my job as a lawyer.
I just wanted you to know I
right?
did talk to the
So,
treasurer, and
yeah.
I know
Now,
that other people in the audience.
I think the question becomes, is it, you know, and this is where I can't find the authority in any case law, opinions, your charter, whose authority is it to sort out those discrepancies, right? Because some of them may be minor, right? Maybe our abatements are 30,000 or our abatements are 0. That may not be a big issue, and maybe you fill it through a fund. Maybe your administrator suggests that you fill a hole somewhere and it's not even worth discussing.
Which we've done in the past.
But there are other questions about other pieces of it that I raised that I think could be more controversial, and suddenly, you're fighting over hundreds of thousands as opposed to tens of thousands. So first of all, I don't know that that's the case, and second of all, I'm just suggesting that you all might need to sort out how you, who has the authority to make those decisions when they're in front of you.
Mr.
Well,
President.
I'm gonna make sure Trish can go, and then.
So, two things about this, and just to one point, Mr. Ciccione just mentioned the abatements. The abatements, the same $30,000 of abatements are addressed in the Budget Committee's budget and Mr. Mantell's budget. You put that out as an example of something that's wrong. It's not wrong. It's a matter of, it's the difference between the Budget Committee did 1 + 2 = 3, and Mr. Mantell did 2 + 1 = 3, but they're accounted for in both these budgets in the same amount. And if you actually take Mr. Mantell's $30,000 and calculate it the same way that the Budget Committee did it, in other words, 1 + 2 = 3, Mr. Mantell's budget number still comes out to be the end. So when you say, well, there are $30,000, the abatements are addressed. But the bigger issue is this, and I'm very surprised at some of the people who are sitting at this table asking this question. Most of this, or a great portion of this budget and every budget, is an estimate. The revenue estimates are estimates. So how you calculate the amount of property tax you pay is based on how much revenue you think you're going to get in. That's all a giant estimate every single year. Even the expenses, to a certain extent, are estimates every year. As long as you have, to the best of your ability, funded the expenses so that you can, cover your costs and you're not overtaxing people, the idea that, every single penny here has to be accounted for that's not how a budget works. It just isn't in any municipality, including ours. And frankly, I could go back and pull out budgets from prior years that had things in them that, well, or maybe that's going to work, or maybe that's not going to work. If you looked at last year's budget, for example, that the voters voted on, and you tried to figure out, and last year there were $75,000 worth of abatements, by the way. If you tried to find out where they were in the entire budget, you couldn't, because in the whole docket, the whole bloody thing, the word abatements never, ever, ever even appears. So if you tried to do the math based on the revenue and expenses that were listed in last year's docket, you'd have been off by $75,000 that you couldn't possibly have figured out where it came from. Last year, Mr. Katz had an item in his alternative petition that a number of the unions were quite upset about, because it called for I can't remember what the percentage was, but it called for a specific percentage decrease in healthcare costs. And there's established case law that says you can't do that. The unions know it. That was in the budget. It got sent forward anyways. No one tried to stop that budget from going on the ballot, even though it had something that we couldn't do, for the fundamental reason that at the end of the day, and what the court would have said if you'd even tried to bring that to them, they would have said, so you figure it out from someplace else. You have the authority to transfer money. The council has the authority to do that, and you have two choices. You can either insist that you're going to implement it and run the risk that the unions are going to file in court, or you just say, you know what, we just can't do this, so we'll deal with it otherwise.
If I may, Councilor,
And let me just make one more point. At the end of the day, all of these numbers come July, when this year's final revenue numbers are all accounted for, they're going to change. They are. They're never exactly what the people vote for, because at the end of the year, they're going to change.
I fully understand that, and I think that's a great point you make. There's the cases that I have looked at make that point, and in fact, that's sort of what leads to some of the litigation that has come out of various budget issues in the past, whether the state drops school funding by a few $100,000, and then the treasurer decides to fully fund the school budget. Now the town is saying, well, where's our $300,000? That's gone to court, right? So, and by the way, landed on the side of the school department. They get to be fully funded, and the town has to sort it out somewhere else, which is the way that the courts have decided it. My concern is not to relitigate what we did at the canvassing board the other night. The canvassing board made its decision, and the town is moving forward with the alternate budget. My only concern is that if you don't have some clear direction or decision or understanding of how you're going to sort out all the discrepancies that were in here, and maybe they're minor and maybe they're major, and maybe you feel that they're not even worth thinking about, and that's fine. That's also your choice. But my concern is that just like the unions and the sort of counter case law provisions, if you don't have a plan for this, then you could end up in litigation, and $30,000 may not be much, but $100,000 in litigation fighting over the $30,000 could really be a problem for your town. And you don't want to get dug into litigation when you have the opportunity to just assert your authority or not, or delegate your authority to make sure that we have a plan to deal with this if this budget were to pass.
Okay, I got it. I would just want to clarify, because I'm trying to find common ground here, and I just want to follow up on a question, then Nancy, then Justin. We will get to questions from the audience as well. That gentleman will be first. So is it, again, ignore all the backup. I'm just looking at these 5 numbers. Can we, the budget, the appropriation is the appropriation, the levy is the levy. Are are you and I saying the same thing? You plug the gap with the general fund, or if you have overtaxed, it goes in the general fund? Is it that simple?
First of all, no, because there's a fundamental difference of opinion here. I don't believe, okay, I looked at this spreadsheet, and I had to actually get professional help to help me figure this out, okay? Because I do not agree with the premise that Mr. Mantell's math is
Okay,
wrong.
But just for the sake of
So,
common
well, wait a
ground,
minute,
assume it for the argument.
No,
Would
but-
that solve the problem?
No, I'm not going to. The math isn't wrong. It's not. If you add up all the revenue, it's all there. If you add up all the expenses, they're all there. So, I
Okay.
don't
All right.
believe it's.
You won't-
I
you
don't
won't-
believe it's
You won't
wrong.
concede it with me. All right, Nancy, then Justin.
Well,
Was it Nancy Mello? Did you want to say something? No, okay, okay. I'm sorry, I thought it was something about.
I guess my concern, or my question and concern is if the numbers, and they don't add up, and they certainly aren't the same numbers the budget committee used for the front numbers that Rob keeps showing, and they show a certain decrease that claims that's going to come to the taxpayer, if those numbers do turn out to be wrong, and people have signed this petition based on this representation and the understanding of what this shows, that they're gonna get in a tax decrease, is that a basis, or are we in trouble there?
Yeah, well, I think yes, because the numbers, look, I know it sounds like we're just saying opposite things to each other 10 times in a row. But the numbers on the face of the petition, the math doesn't work for those 5 numbers. So while you can explain it, and Mr. Mantell has explained what he intended with it, and I believe him to be sincere in his explanation, while you can explain that, in the end, the treasurer has to decide, I guess, or somebody has to decide, the town has to decide whether the taxpayers get that tax cut or whether you spend the money that's on the front of the petition. And those two things aren't the same.
But this is all assuming it's wrong.
Why can't you plug the gap with the general fund?
You could.
Anybody answer that question?
I think you could, but I don't think that that's what's going to happen, to tell you the truth. I am not admitting that there's anything wrong with this, but this has happened in the past. We have people vote for a budget, and then when the budget comes in, this is what happens. Justin, by all means, talk.
I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. We don't have to argue about what the backup says or whether the numbers add up. Let's just agree how to work out and call it a night.
But
Well, I have the floor, please. I have the floor, please.
Because I'm trying to find some consensus here and make sure that we have our act together for tomorrow anyway.
I just want to make sure it's understood that the math on its face does not add up here. The petition says there cannot be a property tax levy not to exceed a number, which is composed of 2 other numbers. Those 2 numbers do not add up to the first number, which means there are 2 allowable tax levies under that. The abatements would not appear in the budget at all because it's an assumption of revenue you're not going to be able to take in. It's not an expense item. And that creates a further problem because I think what appears to have happened is that the sum appropriated for municipal capital here includes an increase of $30,000 from the backup, which I assume is the abatements, but that adds to the expenses, which is then not accounted for in the abatement, so it's actually a $60,000 gap. So that is a problem on its face, so we'll have to know when this comes through, can we spend the extra $30,000? Can the town collect more in taxes than the lowest number on here, which is not the same as the 2 numbers added together? And that creates a challenging problem, and I think that's important for us to understand.
Rob.
Excuse me, if I was a taxpayer, I think I would, if I had the wherewithal and the interest, that's the case I would make. That you can only levy as much as the minimum that calls for. And that will leave you short in the amount that you've promised the school committee and the amount you've promised the town.
Which maybe we could plug with the general fund.
Rob,
Well, but I don't understand that necessarily. The general fund is part of your budget.
Rob, could I have the floor, please?
Well, no, I mean,
You've already,
everything is an estimate, right? The only thing that's fixed are the authorization to spend, and you don't have to spend everything that's authorized, and the
Right.
actual no-kidding tax levy, which I agree, you know, there might be revals or this or that or the other, and then there's a division and there's a rate, so it might move a little bit, but, I guess I see your point that the motor vehicle levy plus the real and tangible property levy doesn't equal the total of 37. So that's a $30,000 error, it looks like? Is there any real debate about that arithmetic?
Yes, it's not an error, but
It's basic.
for the record, I want to say something, please. Let me say something for the record. I quoted what the charter says about using resources for your own political agenda. Mr. Katz has been all over Facebook saying that Budget 2 isn't going to work. No.
That's enough of that.
No, it isn't enough for that. It is the point that Justin is using this forum
I called
to
this
fight
meeting. You
against
didn't call
Budget
this
2.
meeting.
I
I
don't.
called this meeting.
But he is stating this, Rob. And God only knows I'll be called aggressive and abusive tomorrow. But the basic thing here is we are using this forum to talk about two budgets that the people have the right to choose. And then let's see who wins, and then let's see the consequences of it later. But Justin has been very vocal about Budget 2, very vocal. And now he's up here using town resources to promote his own political gain.
You're actually, all right, I called this meeting, all right? And we got a problem with it, I called the meeting, and I want to know what the open issues are. I'm not even taking a side on this. I just want to know the open issues, and I think I have a solution, which is that if this passes, then you plug the gap with the general fund. Now, you raise a good point that I don't know if we should use the motor vehicle component or the real and property tax component or the overall, but the motor vehicle, isn't that also an estimate from time to, I mean, I'm a little bit over.
It is an estimate. Could I show you
As
something?
is the state's
All right, let me
education.
go to Nancy. I'll go to Nancy.
I think Trish might have the floor now.
I'm sorry, I just want to make this one point, and, because I feel like if there are questions with Mr. Mantel's budget, tomorrow night is the place for people to ask him. However, that isn't what I wanted to make clear. I have sat through these budgets for almost 30 years, working with the assessor at times. I don't see him here, but I can assure you that it is the assessor that comes up with final numbers, that this motor vehicle number may not be accurate, that the real estate one could, because he could do all that by abatements back and forth, but that motor vehicle, we get motor vehicles from other communities that still come back and forth. It's not written in stone yet. And I believe last year and prior years, we have had a difference in that number. And between the assessor and the treasurer, they work it out. They work it out. Those aren't set in stone. Because we're missing what we used to get at the financial town meetings, which was a range of 100,000 above and 100,000 below. We no longer have it. And I'm fine with it, but you have now put concrete numbers in here. But they're not necessarily the accurate number.
Would you
Now,
agree?
they're the best approximate that the assessor can give you. But they're gonna not be this exact number. We have never gone over what our revenue's coming in. We've never even used all the amounts from general fund withdrawals. So I can't see the problem. It's gonna fix itself, if in fact there was a problem. I don't go through the
Nancy,
math.
let's see where we agree. So I think we all agree that the motor vehicle tax levy, well, it says not to exceed, but that is at some level an estimate as well, right?
It could exceed, or it could be less. We
Okay.
have had it. We
Do-
need the
so
assessor's opinion.
do we agree on this, that the school appropriation is fixed?
That's fixed.
The municipal appropriation is fixed. We may not
Yes,
spend it all.
because that's
And
for
the
expense.
property tax levy, that can't change, right? I mean, the
Well,
rate can change.
What he would do is
Abatements
make
can
it
move
stable
things.
and
But it
handle
has
everything by abatements. But suppose instead of 30,000 of abatement, he needs 80,000 of abatement. He can't deny an abatement if it's
Right.
legitimate.
But then
And he
becomes
works
like
it out.
a revenue shortfall like anything else can be. Okay.
I really think you're overthinking this. I think between the treasurer and the assessor, I don't think it's unique to these numbers. I know what you're saying. Yes, if I add those two numbers, I am
Yeah.
30,000 short. I think I can figure out whether it's because the abatements are in a different place. I don't even care. But I'm just letting you know that working and knowing that that assessor at times has told me, well, now you're sticking me to a fine number where we had actually a $200,000 range, 100 above, 100 below. You're missing that now. So you're trying to fit a puzzle piece in here, which is the best estimate of the assessor, and he does a great job on doing that. I'm not.
But it's not like the motor vehicles come in low and then we tax more on the real estate. We just have to deal with it
No,
because it's an
we
estimate.
tax more or less on the motor
All right.
vehicle.
I think I've got it. Does anybody else want to talk about any of this?
I would like to.
Oh, do you want to show me that? I'm sorry.
Well, I'd like to share, I'd like to share this with the council. I only have one copy, but I will share it. And admittedly, somebody had to explain this to me, and then my husband, who works in finance, had to re-explain it to me again. But basically, a lot of the confusion in this, a whole lot of the confusion in this, does seem to be that that Mr. Mantell chose to address the abatements in a different way than the Budget Committee did. But there's nothing in the charter that says you have to do it one way or another. And if you look at other communities, Warren does it the way that Mr. Mantell did it. Middletown and Portsmouth, on the other hand, they treat them totally differently, and they treat them as negative revenue. They put them in negative revenue. So different communities do it differently. But if you went looking through this and you started from the premise that you were short this $30,000 because you didn't know where the abatements were, that is the basis for a whole bunch of what claims to be errors. But I'll share this with everybody, and basically what it does is, this is the Mantell method of reconciling this. Here's the Budget Committee's method, and of course those numbers are going to be slightly different because they're two different budgets. But then if you take Mr. Mantell's numbers and you do it the same way that the Budget Committee did it, handle the abatements the same way, at the end of the day, Mr. Mantell's numbers are exactly the same regardless of which way he did it. They come out to be the same numbers. And I think that is a lot of the basis of this. Other people may not want a copy, but if they do, there is one there that I'm happy to share. And there's nothing, as I said, there's nothing in the charter that tells you how to do this. And frankly, maybe there should be directions that say how you should do it. And as I said, last year, if you look at the budget, you'd never even know that there were $75,000 worth of abatements are in there, which are there, but you'd never be able to find them because the word abatement appears nowhere in the docket.
So do we all agree, and I'm trying to find areas where we agree, do we all agree that if a property owner is entitled to an abatement, they're going to get it, regardless of how we budget? So that's going to happen. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to try to summarize what I hope is common ground, and then I'll let everybody have the last word. If the budget if budget 2 passes, the sum to the school department, that's a fixed number. The sum to the municipal is a fixed number. The levy on the property tax is a fixed number. The motor vehicle is, as always, some kind of an estimate. I mean, they're pretty good at it, but you never know how many cars come and go. And the percentage, it is what it is, but you don't really know what you got until the actual certification of the levy. And if there's any shortfalls, then, because I think we're well above our charter minimum, we could fund from the general fund, and if we overtax, then it would be contributed to the general fund. So without taking shots at each other, is that a fair statement of where we agree?
Mr. President, could I add one thing I think we're overlooking? And I may be wrong, but I think it's my understanding that one of the differences in the budgets is that the Budget Committee put $316,000, I think it was, capital into the municipal side of the budget. I think Mantell's budget puts it into the school side, which increases which would increase then for the town, the Let me finish speaking, please. Thank you. Which would increase the maintenance of effort for the town the following year. Isn't that true?
Rob, no.
No, why not?
I think we solved that one.
No, because
That was the question I had for Department of Education today. They were very clear that it's what you spend the money on, not where you account for it. So I think you're safe on that front. I think
Well, I
that,
misunderstood you. I thought you said if it appeared under the schools, that would go towards the maintenance of effort.
no, because it's not just the items in the school budget that go to your maintenance of effort. Actually, even things that are in your operation budget could be deemed as capital if you ask the commissioner for a waiver to say you buy Chromebooks for all your kids. Those could be capital, but they may be in your operating budget. Depends how you finance it, depends how you spend that money. But in this case, if that is actually a bathroom repair, which you do once every 20 years or 30 years or whatever it is, that will not go towards your maintenance of effort, even though it's school department capital. They will treat that, you'll be allowed, assuming your school department does this, be allowed to treat that as regular,
That's what you're hearing from
recurring expenditure.
Mr. President, on that note, my understanding is that, my understanding is that the maintenance of effort is satisfied as far as the right is concerned, but there will be some questions about whether the town can insist that the money go toward what it was appropriated for, the bathrooms, or what happens to it, whether the school department even has to do those projects, depending how it's funded.
Yeah, I think in Tiverton, the school department has more discretion to shuffle around money within their budget than the town does. So it is more restricted for the stated purpose in the town budget. If you move it to the school budget, you lose some ability to have those repairs be guaranteed to be done. If the school decides halfway through the year that, you know what, we really want to hire another teacher's aide, and we're going to take that money, and instead of doing the capital improvements, we'll do those next year, and we'll hire the teacher's aide this year. I'm not sure there's a lot of ability to stop that from happening unless you had it in the town budget. So I think in terms of controlling the budget, the town had a reason for putting those on the town side, and then plus managing your capital as a whole, there could be advantages too. I don't really know, but I assume that's the motivation. But it's not a maintenance of effort issue. It's simply how you choose to control your capital expenditures in the town.
And just a final note on the levies, just to make sure it's clear, I wouldn't agree that the motor vehicle tax levy and property tax levy are fixed numbers, but they are fixed maximums. And if you go back a few years, the numbers have changed, but they've always been less than the maximum on the ballot, at least in recent years. So I think there is reason to suggest that the lowest number on the ballot is the maximum for the tax levies. And the abatement issue doesn't satisfy that because the abatements on the petition are not taken out of the total tax. They're not included in the total tax levy, although they're included in one component of that, but that doesn't add up correctly. On the other hand, they're added as an expense, which actually brings it the wrong way. I just want to make sure that's clear.
If I may, Mr. President, I don't think the abatement issue, obviously that's the easiest one because it's the plain math error on the face, but it is only $30,000. That worries me a lot less. What worries me is that you have a taxpayer who says, I voted for whatever reduction is promised on the face of that, and so you cannot have a tax rate that is different than that. And if my sort of worst case calculation here is correct, then you've got a tax rate that will underfund your budget by about 0.6%. And if I was a taxpayer, I would sue to not let you raise it above that. And if I'm the school or perhaps the town, I would not want to have my money be short. So I think that's the concern. I understand Nancy's point that could, in practice, if that's been done just sort of administratively and no one's ever objected, that's fine. My concern is that you have some risk if you were to set a rate that was different than what Mr. Mantell stated on the face of his petition.
But the tax rate changes often. It's not uncommon after the FTR that when whether it's the budget committee's budget or the petitioner's budget or anybody's budget, when the final revenue numbers comes in, it changes.
I completely understand, and I think that's absolutely acceptable. Because what you're not doing is you're not changing the rate of increase over the prior year for your taxpayers. Because that's just other revenues, right? That's not your taxpayer revenue. You're shuffling it to keep that. You can't increase that over 4%. There's other rules that go around that. That doesn't change, but the fact is that if I vote for this budget and then you increase my taxes more than it says on the front of that petition, I'm gonna have a claim.
You're not gonna do that.
But you're not gonna do that.
Well, I hope not, but I think you may find that the expenditures are not there, according, off by 0.6%, which is not an insignificant number. It's not $30,000.
Okay, so there's some risk of a tax, okay.
But and I think if you just keep the levy where it is, then you're fine, because then there's no harm, no foul for the taxpayers at least.
So the levy being the 30, well, I should say, the 36,532,048,
I know, I mean the percentage.
The percentage.
the percentage of .02.
Rob, could we have Mr. Mandel come up and speak?
I'd like to make sure everybody's had a chance to, Donna, do you want to say anything? I'd like to give Sandy, Mr. Mantell a shot if you'd like, and then the gentleman over there. Again, I would like to say, as far as debating what's in the backup and whether this account is good or bad, I think that's better placed for tomorrow night, I agree. We're just trying to make sure you understand these 5 numbers so that if we're asked a question, and as far as I see, I think I'm sensing some kind of a consensus on this, but you can tell me if you disagree. Did you want to add anything, Mr. Mantell, or?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Attorney Tuccio for calling me back a couple times last week. And I apologize for saying you're math deficient. That was a little heated. But
I did graduate from 6th grade, so I got that math,
okay.
all right, at least.
It's okay.
Thank you.
You did mention your memorandum of outlining the deficiencies, so I have to respond to that. I've been away for the past couple of days, so I didn't get a chance. I looked at it this morning. I'll just cover a couple, and you can tell me to stop when you're ready. You put additional deficiencies. You said, I referred to section 3310, overstates heat in line item by 2,000, fails to show increase. That does not appear in section 3310. Number B, misrepresents budget numbers by understating station building maintenance by 2,000. Station building maintenance is 30,000 in the budget and 40,000 in my budget, the 10,000 difference. C, failed to show subtotal of changes versus budget committee petition, protection to persons and property. I showed a subtotal for the fire department. The police did not have a difference. I didn't think it was necessary to total a subtotal change for protection of property. I don't think that's an issue. D, SM proposal fails to include the breakdown of principal and interest in debt service. I just showed the total bond payment. Taxpayers don't care if it breaks down by interest and principal. If that were the case, then the leases should show a breakdown for interest and principal. Now I'll go to the major deficiencies. SM Intel proposal fails to distinguish between school and municipal CapEx. The budget committee doesn't distinguish it either.
But they did.
Shall I continue?
They did this year.
No, I'm done. That's 5 out of 8. 4 minor, 1 major, wrong. Okay, I'm just telling you, wrong. Now, as far as explaining I'm gonna explain this tomorrow at the budget hearing, and I'll be more explicit, but the document that Mrs. Hilton showed you, a CPA did that analysis for me, okay? Here's what I had to do for the budget, and by the way, Mrs. Mello, has the Excel spreadsheet for the budget been submitted to you yet? A public document from the budget committee?
Yes.
When
You
did you
mean
get
the,
Not
yes, I
PDF,
have,
the Excel.
The Excel.
I have an Excel,
When did you receive it?
oh God, I don't know, I think a day before I went on vacation.
Okay, well, that wasn't
I'm
ready.
not sure it's everything you're looking for, but I have
Yep.
a,
Well, that
I
wasn't
have
ready.
this document in Excel
Right.
spreadsheet.
That wasn't ready for me, so I had to actually take the PDF file, download it, convert it to Excel. I went through, recreated all the formulas. I double-checked the budget committee's numbers as well as mine. They're accurate. I calculated the net tax levy. It includes the $30,000 abatement. If you take a look at the top 2 numbers, the school committee and the municipal budget, yes, they include the 30,000 abatement. Do you know why? Because the 30,000 is in the net tax levy. Every year, the people of this community have been voting for an imbalanced budget. No one's ever questioned it. They have this document, here, look at it, all they care about is, what's the taxes? The percentage increase, I'm gonna show them that they're still gonna save money, but I'm holding that for the hearing. But those are my issues.
I'm
Those
happy
are my
to,
issues.
Well, I definitely wanted to give Mr. Mantell the floor. A lot of that I do think is for tomorrow, so
And I'm saying that would be for
but
tomorrow,
you
but
deserve
I
it,
will explain- I
you
will
deserve the
respond
floor.
to the memo.
Yep.
Okay, there are some errors.
Do you mind, you don't
Go
have,
ahead.
you don't have to answer me, but
I'll answer you.
as I described what I'm hoping is a consensus, did you disagree with anything I said about the school budget is what it is, the municipal is what it is, the real property levy is what it is,
Mine,
and everything,
mine is what it is. The budget committee's is not.
but on yours,
On my
we agree.
document,
Okay,
line 1 and 2, if you numbered them, that's what they should be, they're correct.
Okay.
Line 3, yeah, there may be an issue with the abatement, that's because I calculated the abatement separately. To my way of thinking, the abatement is not an item you debate in a budget forum. The abatement is an administrative adder after the fact that you add to come up with the tax rate. That's how I looked at it.
yep. And we also agree that if you're legally entitled to abatement, you're gonna get it.
Yeah, you know,
Okay.
if someone says, I need an abatement, my car is, needs brakes, it's dented, the engine has to be rebuilt, it's only worth $500. Yeah, they should get an
Okay,
abatement.
so I'm just trying to find where we agree, and I think tomorrow night would be the better place to talk about,
That's fine.
you know, whether this is good or not good, or whether it might come from a general fund or not, but I feel like I'm gonna go out on a high note here, but I did, offer the floor to the gentleman, and then anybody else from the public, if you'd like to speak, but please, if it's, we're just trying to find consensus on these, on what numbers will be fixed, so debating the line items really is better for tomorrow night, but it is open to the, sir.
John Souza. Tomorrow night is fine, and it may be the way to do it. What I was having a hard time with was Mr. Ciccione's, there are errors throughout this, math errors. Where? He never delineated. So at least Mr. Mantell has gone through and given us some idea of where those differences are. I'm an accountant, I'm a school business manager. I deal in direct. If I ever went to a school committee and said, oh, that thing's got errors, but I don't, don't worry about it. No, I'd be laughed out of the room. If we're gonna discuss that, then let's discuss it tomorrow night, and I think you're right. If people have questions, that's the time to do it. Number one, the Board of Canvassers has already voted. So we're not gonna sit here tonight and change that, I don't think. But tomorrow night, with the presentation of the budget and the discussion, the hearing, if there's questions on Mr. Mantell's budget, people are free to ask. If there's questions on the school department budget, the budget committee's budget, people are free to ask, and I think that's where the questions belong. I think you did a good job of trying to get people together in the broad spectrum, and I think that's where this belongs relative to the council. Tomorrow night, the public's gonna go through it, and that's when people need answers. But you can't just stand there and say, well, there's discrepancies in the petitioner's budget, or there's discrepancies in the budget committee's budget. You gotta be specific. You can't just make general statements and expect people to buy it, and especially people such as myself who deal with numbers and finances all the time. We don't deal that way, we don't operate that way, and in my mind, it makes the whole thing suspicious, skeptical.
Mr. President, I just so in case people do homework overnight, last year's budget document did miss a page that's generally in the budget dockets. So if you look online on the current one, they put it toward the end this year, but there's a line that says add allowance for abatements. And then if you go back 2 years, it's the same as it was all the way before. They didn't use the term abatements, they said allowance for uncollected taxes. So it's typically been in there. Last year, that page appears to have been left out on the online docket. I also wanted to just offer the suggestion, to my mind, the solicitor has offered an explanation, as have I, where the numbers are differing. And it's very strange. It's like we're just not connecting, because literally, the numbers do not add up on the page. And we can debate that tomorrow, we can debate that at other times. I think we've done that enough tonight. I'm just saying, it's a surreal thing. I don't know how to find that connection, because the numbers literally do not add up, and doesn't require much more explanation than that. And the attorney did list specific items there were discrepancies in the budget. So on that disagreement, I'm not sure where we're going awry here.
In my defense, Mr. Chairman, if any member, accountant or otherwise, would like to see the public document that was given to the canvassing board, that actually does list line by line and dollar by dollar. It was not generalities, it was listed line by line, and that's available to anybody to look at themselves.
Town treasurer have
No.
Town clerk has it.
Town treasurer have
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
and has since last week. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Does anybody, I feel like we have a working, okay? Did you want to go, Ms. Halleck, and then Mr. McLaughlin?
Vice Chair of this year's Budget Committee, I think we need to be careful when you're talking about the Budget Committee budget. There is nothing wrong with the Budget Committee budget. Last year, the chairman decided to use uncollected taxes, that's what he decided. We have abatements there this year. It's not in the actual docket part, it's on the extra worksheets that come at the end, after the docket itself. So, Tricia, it's not in the docket, it's in the sheets after the docket. And just be careful when you're talking about the Budget Committee budget, because that is completely accurate, just to let you know.
Well, we think.
Sir?
I'm Bill McLaughlin. My question is for Mr. Sicilione. I don't want your interpretation of this. I want you to tell me exactly where in the charter it says that the numbers have to add up, and the town council gets to decide if those numbers are correct for this budget to go forward. Not your interpretation. I want you to tell me exactly where it says.
I don't
in the
believe
charter.
I don't believe that's accurate.
What's not accurate?
I don't-
I'm not
I-
looking for your interpret. Tell me in the.
No, I'm saying I don't
where it says.
believe it says that. I don't believe the town
Then
council.
Why is this being a debate? Are we listening to Mr. Katz's? Doesn't add up, doesn't add up. It's not in there, it doesn't have to add up, so this is a waste of everybody's time. It'll be solved tomorrow night,
I don't think,
excluding Mr. Katz filing a law.
that's not what you said.
Just in the section of the charter that states what must be on the petition, it says you have to
Of
provide.
course it's what- I wanna know where it
I'm
says
trying,
it has to
I'm
add up.
explaining,
You decide that.
well, it says it has to add up because it said it has to list the real and tangible property tax levy, the motor vehicle tax levy, and the resulting total tax levy.
I
That,
believe that's all Mr. Mantello.
no, but when you add those two numbers, they don't add up.
Doesn't
I'm just
say
saying,
it has to.
it says you have to provide the resulting number from combining two numbers. That's addition.
That's not
That,
outrageous.
well, again, here,
another
this is where I'm not understanding.
We debated this the other night. Can we move forward?
I wanna hear it verbatim out of the charter, not your interpretation.
I just recited it pretty much out verbatim.
Yeah, pretty much, not
Rob,
verbatim.
can we just?
Okay, well, one thing, again, whether the charter says it or not,
It is
I-
important whether the
I-
charter says
I
it or
think
not.
the-
That's what's on trial here,
I think,
basically.
I think the room agrees, I haven't heard anybody say they disagree, that the school number is what it says, the municipal number is what it says, the real
Operating.
municipal operating CapEx, the real property tax is what it says, and to Justin's point, the motor vehicle can't exceed the certain number. I think we all
Right here in the chart.
agree on that.
Yeah,
Do we want to talk about what the charter says?
well, the direct quote is, quote, "The dollar amount to raise by taxation, including maximum dollar amounts for the motor vehicle, real and tangible property, and resulting total property tax levies."
Result.
The resulting levy is what you get when you put two other things together. It's the definition of resulting.
All right, that's the answer to the question.
No, you do. It's just adding the two numbers. It's adding property tax plus motor vehicle tax, and you get the resulting
What
number.
section was that, just for the,
That's 301B1C.
301,
No, that's not the floating number. The floating number is the rate that happens after.
okay.
The
I think
vote.
we answered that question. 301B1,
301B1C,
Mr. Coates.
page 4 of the charter.
Thank you. Michael Dakotas, 19 Louise Drive. I wanted to follow up because Ms. Hollenbach made a comment. So I also served on the budget committee last year with Ms. Hollenbach. I'm familiar with this process. I wasn't on the budget committee this year, but what I can tell you is, last year when the budget committee put forth their budget, Mr. Katz was also on the budget committee. I know he worked hard, putting an alternate budget at the same time we probably were meeting up at the table. For you to really pound your fist this year, Mr. Katz and Ms. Hollenbach, and say, we need to support this town budget this year, where was your support last year? You were on the budget committee. For you to sit here this year and poke holes at an alternate budget, which the TTA has created alternate budget for the town of Tiverton, it's funny how you're attacking it this year. You brought in a solicitor that's helping back your claim. This is why a lot of people in this room, that came back in November, December, did not want this gentleman to be our solicitor. This is a shell game. We're putting together an alternate budget. Honor it and let the people vote, and stop quarreling about it, because it makes it worse, especially when you're on Facebook all the time. That's my personal comment. It's an opinion. Thank you.
Okay, so again, this is not, we're not relitigating the Board of Canvassers, we're not conducting a financial town hearing, we're just talking about these numbers, so can we just try to focus on this? That's the only reason we're here, okay? So it's an open public meeting, gotta be germane to the point of the conversation, not taking shots at each other, okay? Miss Susan.
Andrea Souza, South Avenue. I just want to point out one thing, and this is actually in the charter, and I don't know exactly where, but I know it's in the charter. The way our charter is written, once a budget is put on the ballot, whether it's a budget committee or a petitioner ballot, once it has been agreed on to be put on the ballot, no changes can be made, which means that tomorrow night's meeting is actually moot. So is all of this discussion. It's a moot point. Nothing can be changed. We can yell all we want. We can throw numbers at each other all we want. We can say this one doesn't add up, that one doesn't add up. Oh, look at this one. This one's purple, this is pink, whatever.
Let's not have the hearing.
Nothing can be changed. It's on the ballot. I just wanted everyone to be aware of that and have it on the record. They're done.
Can I address something?
So that's what it is.
I'd just like to address two things. What is in the charter is that an elector petition cannot be changed or altered once the town clerk certifies that the copy she has made, let me finish, the copy she has made of the budget turned in is the copy that is what was presented to her. So it's at that level that the elector petition cannot be changed. The purpose of the financial town hearing is not to change any numbers on any budget. It's for the sponsors of the two budgets to be available to discuss their respective budgets and to answer questions. That's all I want to say. It's not there to change numbers.
And my understanding is that once a alternate budget is presented to the town clerk, it is put in, they say, yes, that is what I put in, and then petitions are set up that they can go get signatures on. So
No,
therefore,
wrong.
once it's submitted.
Once they get signatures, yes, but they have to, the town clerk has to certify what they go out to get, that what she is typing up for them to go out and get signatures on is what they have presented.
And that's been done.
And that, at that point, nothing can change on the
Right, so
elector
that's my
petition.
point.
I understand that, but what the next statement you're making is that, what's the point of the financial town hearing? It is not to argue numbers, it's for the two budget sponsors to have an opportunity to explain their budgets and answer questions, period.
And the way it's being set up, in fact of discussing math, as we've been talking tonight, is almost to set it up that way. And I just want everybody to know, because some people don't know, that it can't be changed. The Board of Canvassers has approved it. The alternate budget is what the alternate budget is.
Right.
So I just want people to be aware, I want it on the record, that nothing can change. Just so everybody knows that, the town knows that, nothing can be changed.
But do you agree, when you say nothing can be changed, do we agree that the school committee has authority to move, to make changes?
My point is
based-
saying nothing can be
Right.
changed, is nothing can be changed that's on the ballot.
Right,
Yes,
on the five
after
numbers.
once a
Exactly.
budget is approved by the voters, then yes, money can be moved
Okay.
around and had in the funds.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're almost there.
Patty Souza for Brighton Beach. So, I mean, to speak
speak to that, so tomorrow night is when the budget committee and Mr. Martell can speak to what the specifics of these budgets, right? I'm no financial wizard, I wish I were, sorry, didn't get.
No, you're correct, and people can ask
So
questions.
people can ask questions, we can talk about the specifics like we're doing here. So I'm a little confused as to what here is all about, and I'm a little nervous because Counselor Coulter keeps repeating the same thing about, I think we're all in agreement in the room, haven't heard anybody object, correct? That these numbers are what they are, correct? So I'm a little nervous about, why are you asking us this? Why are you wanting the whole room to say, yes, we agree, the numbers are what they are? I'm a little concerned about why you're pressing that. Why do you keep asking us that?
Well, we have the advice of counsel that says that there are some flaws with this, and I just need to be able to know whether that's true or not, what is gonna change or not change. And I think that we've answered that question. And that's why I said at the outset, a particular line item, that is not the point of this discussion tonight. The point of this discussion tonight is which of these 5 numbers could move or could not move. And I feel like that's something that we need to have a point of view on before tomorrow, and at least for me, I think we do.
So which of the 5 numbers from the budget committee could move or not move? I'm not sure why.
They would be the same, wouldn't they? Would they be the same thing?
I'm not sure, I'm just not
All right.
understanding what the focus of tonight is.
Well-
I'm not sure I understand. Seems to me you're picking apart the petitioner's budget,
Because
yet we're not picking apart the budget committee's budget. And I'm sorry if you don't want me to, because it's absolutely accurate wherever you are. But I don't know that, just like I don't know if Mr. Montel's is absolutely accurate. And like Tricia's brought to light, neither one are an absolute accurate depiction of what is gonna happen in July anyway. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we all looked at it the other night, they're almost identical, these budgets are almost the identical budget. There's a few things that are different, which are completely transparent in that last column. So what's the problem? I don't get it. Like, what is the problem here?
Well, not to speak for the council president, but I think when we say what numbers can move or not move, it's not necessarily the specific number on either petition. It's generically, if we're looking at these 5 numbers that have to be on a petition, if there's a discrepancy, whichever budget it is, if there's a discrepancy, which ones have to be what's listed on the vote? I think that's basically the question. Can the levy move, or can the appropriation move, the amount of money we can spend? What is allowed to move? Whichever budget it is, I think that's the origin of the question.
That's it.
Those numbers are a result of the budget, right?
Right, no, but what I'm saying is, we have,
They can't move unless the budget moves.
no, what I'm saying is, it's not a budgetary thing, it's a legal thing. If we have 5 numbers that, no, I'm saying, in the category of being legal. No, what I'm saying is, I thought this was clearly stated, but if there are 5 numbers that people are voting on, and they don't match as they should, whatever budget it is, whatever year it is, which one is allowed to change? Can we change this number, the spending? Can we tell the school committee you can't have that money? No, we can't. Okay, that one can't change.
Okay, I just need to, we're not voting on the 5 line items that needed to be present in order for the budget to pass the canvassers committee to the ballot.
No,
That's not what we're voting on.
No,
on the
literally
15th.
we are. They're all on the ballot. All those numbers.
We're voting on the budget, and and I think I understand what you're saying, because there's a rub, because the numbers don't jive in your mind.
they
Yet
don't
the
jive in
$30,000
addition.
Right, because the 30,000, the abatement was brought in differently than it was brought in on the budget committees. At the very bottom of both budgets, it all adds up.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
It doesn't.
It does. Well, the bottom lines add up. It's just because, it's how it got there. So
Well-
this is why I'm concerned about why you keep pressing the room
to agree that the numbers are what they are, right? So it feels a little bit like, I don't know, like we're playing a game of mousetrap is what it feels like. That's all I'm saying. I don't understand.
I just hope you understand, we do vote on more than one number on the actual ballot, okay? That's,
It has to be listed.
so if there is a discrepancy, and I'm not saying there is, but if there were to be a discrepancy, we just want a clear understanding of which one has priority. That's it. On either budget. I concede your point. I haven't looked at the budget committee that closely, but same thing.
We're not talking about the budget committee budget tonight. We are only talking about the petition.
We're talking generically about,
No,
there's
we're
5 or
not.
6 numbers here.
Wait, we're not talking generically.
Okay.
And
I think we've answered your question.
That's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Burke?
President Mike Burke, first off, I do want to thank you. Other members might have been there, but I appreciate you being an ample house this way. I believe this meeting is inappropriate and way overstepping the role of this council at this stage of the budget process. Everything discussed here tonight is what's on the agenda and intentionally on the agenda tomorrow night, except for the concerns you may have on whichever budget passes, how then that gets managed. That's a conversation that occurs after the FTR, not here. Tonight, this is simply a political game to again get your point out there that you don't like one of the budgets. Great, we all understand that. The last piece is, and I respect what your effort to run this meeting, Mr. President, but please don't assume that silence on any council member's part, anybody in the audience part, means that they're in agreement with what you said.
I get it.
Thank you.
All right, you get the last word.
Stu Gilfillan, Highland Road. So, is anybody up here a CPA? So, one of the things that I've heard is that the town treasurer has reviewed this budget and validated it. So, with that in mind, and knowing that we have a pretty quality town treasurer, I'm curious which one of you has a financial acumen that is better than our town treasurer? Who here can state that she is inaccurate in what she's reviewed? Because by stating that it's inaccurate, and on the other hand, you have a town treasurer that has validated it, what you're essentially doing is saying that a town employee is delinquent in their functions. Is that what you're saying right here?
Well, for the, my understanding was, well, we haven't heard from the town treasurer. And my understanding is that, well, from what I understood from what Councilor DiMadeira said earlier, I don't know that it was validated as much as she said we can deal with this as we always do. All right, well, I'll talk to her tomorrow.
We gotta have a little more decorum here, okay? Did you want to have a say?
Can I?
I'm sorry.
I
thought
just
you were
like,
trying to speak.
I like,
Did you want to speak? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I thought you were raising your hand.
I like to clear up what was just said about what I stated.
All right. Want to go ahead and clarify on the treasurer question, please?
I asked Denise if she found any flaws in this budget, and she said no. That's what I asked her. I said, do you think this budget will work? She said yes. That's what I asked her. I didn't ask her, and I will tomorrow. I'll go to there, and I will point out exactly what's been pointed out and ask her what she thinks about it. But I asked her if she found a big problem with this budget, and she said no.
I just have a worry that if you allow small things to get passed that are not correct, it could lead on to other things in the future. It's like that's what happens. It's okay now, but what about if something bigger changes, something bigger happens? And I really am against the lawsuits. I don't want the town to have to fight the
This is like,
Guys, come on. This is the last speaker.
So here's the thing, I care about the town, that's why I don't want to incur lawsuits, that's what I'm saying, it's pro for you all, not to have to pay for it.
tomorrow ought to be something.
If you do things, if you
Can we go?
Trying.
legal things happen, and they have to sue because they're not. Well, they're not, the court said they're not.
I think we need to go, Rob. I think we need to stop this, Rob. Oh, he's using it.
Like that helps.
That's the first time I've seen it.
Okay, do you want to
I do have one more format thing.
Well, we have another item on the agenda.
Is there
All right, let's take a 5-minute recess.
Why don't we adjourn, huh? What's the first thing on-
Adjourn shortly. I just wanted to, I think that the town solicitor is owed an apology for the treatment that he received the other night. And what I want to say is that, you know, there's room for reasonable disagreement on things, but that is not how we have treated people in the past we have disagreed with. He is a public servant, and he put a good faith argument out there. And by the way, he put it out in advance. At least some of the counselors got a look at it. At least the issue is raised. Monday, there was a draft document that was sent out. There was communications with the petitioner, and there was a memorandum that was written. And I just think that that level of effort is perhaps farther than what we've seen in the past. And you know, we don't always have to agree, but I just don't. And I don't think that some of the room will agree with me, but I just want the solicitor to hear from me that you should not have to be subject to that for doing your best work on this. And we'll debate the memo, we'll debate the numbers, and we'll debate everything tomorrow. But I just want to make sure that that was said on the record. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Move to adjourn. Yeah. Move to adjourn.
Can I address that as I was on the board?
No, we're done.
No.
We're done.
Is there a second to the motion to adjourn? Okay, have your say. Have your say.
You don't want me to tell everybody that last year on April 24th,
No,
2018,
no.
Mr. Katz wrote about then solicitor, if you like to talk about people being rude.
Why are we
About
doing
then
this?
solicitor, the town solicitor.
Okay, I'm going.
But $98,000 plus reasons to do whatever the town council wants him to do in regards to Mr. DeSisto. Also in regards to Mr. DeSisto. And so we see again that the town council and its hired solicitor will do anything to get their way. As responsible and active electors of Tiverton, we can't simply let that stand, and we won't. That was Mr. Katz to our previous solicitor. So I think if you want us to apologize to Mr. Keown.
You're reading some kind of letter?
I am reading what Mr. Katz posted on Tiverton Fact Check.
Yeah, well, that's different than abusing a public official in a meeting.
My point being, would like us to apologize, that Mr. Katz should have apologized to
Yeah.
Mr. DeSisto and also.
Andrea,
No, let me finish.
he
As a member
apologized.
of the
No, he
Board of
did not.
Canvassers, we did not get Mr. Chichoni's memo until the meeting started at 5:30. Ms. DiMederos, Mr. Katz, and the town clerk were emailed that memo at 5 o'clock that day. So I just want that on record too. Thank you.
With regard to that, my email said 5:07. I was already in the building. I think everybody was already in the building. So it's not as if, no, as soon as it was done, it went out to the interested parties who happened to be all in the same place. It's not like we had reviewed it beforehand.
To us at 5:30, not one member
Well,
of the Board of
it was never
Canvassers
handed to
was
me.
emailed to them at 5:07.
I like your motion to
We
adjourn.
got it at 5:30, after it was emailed to you.
That's just, I wanted to second the president's apology and thank you for the work that you did on this issue and for the increased transparency in past years with other petitions. With other petitions in past years, we showed up at that meeting to certify with no notice that there was any problem whatsoever. In this case, you brought it out into public days in advance and people were able to even bring attorneys in order to argue their case. And I think if that had been done in the past, other issues that we've had might have gone differently. And I think that ought to be the model going forward.
I second the motion to adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor?
Rob Swab.
Okay.